Okay, Jumrip Suo, Professor Kenneth. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
So I have the most simple question. Why did you choose psychology as your main subject?
Interesting question. So actually, oddly enough, as a high school student, I was not very serious. And I hated high school. And people would always ask me, what are you going to do when you go to university? What do you want to be? And being the person I was, I would say, I'm going to be a weed, smell. And basically, I was just going to blow with the wind. I had no idea, but then I finished high school. I wasn't good, and I ended up at a state university. And I know some things about myself, but I don't know exactly what I want to do. But I know there has to be something that involves my brain. I know it has to be something that's creative, and it has to be something where I have some sense of autonomy. And so things that come up are photography, directing movies, psychology. But psychology just seemed, it was really, as I was taking the classes, which were required in the West, it seemed really interesting. And it appealed to me. I could have gone into literature and been very happy. But psychology, because we're about psychology, and it turns out, as I'm starting to teach, it touches on everything. So it touches on business, it touches on war, it touches on IT, creating web pages, ergonomics, everything. So it's very interesting.
Do you like the complexity of the subject? Because in psychology, I'm pretty sure one is not one. It's not like math, scientific, 1 to 1, 1 plus 1 equals 2.
Yeah.
It's way a complex of.
Yeah, how do you know that?
Because, define depression or define any psychological terms like schizophrenia, right?
Right.
You can't really define it. But you can define
the
symptoms.
DSM does. Yeah, I mean, you have to have a definition, even if it's difficult. But depression is very difficult. So, but anyway, yes, it is. So because I'm teaching psychology now and also learning it, what's interesting is it's paradoxical. What I mean by that is you would think that, like, there was a very famous study done like 1930s or something in America, and they made the lights very bright, they made them medium, or they made them low. Because at that time, they were focusing on the environment. The people didn't matter. The people were basically just ants. Okay. And what they expected is that when the low light came along, people would work slower. But it turned out it had no impact at all. And the reason was a couple. First of all, they had people with clipboards watching them making notes. And these people had been treated as ants, as just worker bees. And all of a sudden, they were getting attention, so they were very happy, so they started working harder. And so the idea is that what this did for organizational psychology is it basically showed that the environment doesn't matter, and what people really matter is being motivated. So that kind of changed the whole field. But the idea was, all of a sudden, also if someone works too fast, you would think that, people are like, oh, nice job. But actually what they found is men, particularly men, would come up and hit the guy like that and say, you're messing us up. You're working too fast in the factory. Stop that. So a lot of the things that happen in terms of people who are depressed and commit suicide don't usually kill themselves when they're very depressed. It's only when they're coming out of the depressed. So there's lots of these kind of things that you wouldn't expect. So it is math in a sense that there are theories that prove it, but it is paradoxical and it's always, oh, I didn't expect that.
Oh, so is it something are you familiar with Hawthorne effect?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Hawthorne effect.
Exactly that.
Yes.
Okay, so I thought you meant that. So I believe, I'll try to explain it as best as possible. It's the feeling of being watched and your behavior change.
Right. It actually applies to research, because one of the problems when you do experimental research, which is like in a room where people are watching you, is that by the fact that you're being watched, you're being changed. So you also have observational research where you look at people, but if you're there watching the people, your presence can have an impact. So as people, this is philosophy, we're always aware of ourselves, but we're always aware that people look at us, the other. And
right.
So this changes how we are. I mean, the same thing, if you go to a club and you see people looking at you, you're aware of that. And it changes how you act, how you stand.
How you dance.
Or if you do, right.
So Professor Kenneth, what is your hot take in psychology?
Like, what's really the thing I enjoy the most?
Hot take meant your opinion on some topics, if you have it.
Well, I guess one that's interesting. So one of the things I'm hoping to do at my university is, because I think something that's very important and is very relevant to Cambodia is what's called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think one of the things that's not maybe understood, it seems like, particularly with PTSD, but also with a lot of mental health, and particularly in Asia, there's this idea in psychology is that quite often Asians tend to bury, suppress, or repress things, or avoidance is a defense mechanism. You know, because you want to save face. And so going off and saying I'm depressed or I'm weak is very difficult. It's not, and so many people, I think, research has shown that when they have PTSD or depression, anxiety, whatever it is, they don't want to show it. So sometimes they just don't want to talk about it. I know for myself, when I first came to Cambodia a long time ago, I would talk to the people making dukalak, the fruit shakes on the street. And I had enough Khmer where I asked them, oh, Tana na Kampuchea, Pol Pot, whatever. And then they would answer, and then I would start asking them about, were you here? And they would start crying. And it's like all of a sudden just this emotion came out. And so what people don't think about sometimes, you think, oh, this makes me sad, let me avoid it. And this is, even if you're attacked by a shark, or if someone's like in Gaza and there's a war or rape, you think, I don't want to talk about that, it bothers me. But the opposite is actually true. The more you, partly what happens is you can't run away from your own brain because your brain's with you, and to the extent that you try to avoid your own brain, it's almost like a computer. A lot of your computer program is working on making that program not come up to speed. And so by talking about what you went through and going through it in detail, it helps you to come to peace and somehow not forgetting, but not have the emotion with it. So people with PTSD really should try to meet with people and try to unbury the past as hard as that is.
From your personal experience and from your extended experience in psychology, is it better to confront it?
Well, it's not, I mean, but if someone doesn't want to, you can't make them. I mean, this is always true. As a therapist, I always had the idea that I can't make you change. If you want to, I'm your partner, and I'm really on your side, and I'll do whatever I can to help. But if someone really is phobic or they have anxiety about it, you can't force them to. I mean, with people who are using alcohol, you can do something which is called you bring the bottom up. Because basically they won't stop until they hit bottom. Could be jail, could be they have a heart attack. So Matthew Perry, unfortunately, eventually died. But you can all of a sudden bring them pressure with alcohol and say, if you don't do this, you'll lose your job, you'll lose your kids. You can kind of push people. So I think the thing, instead of forcing people, you think about, I care about you. I kind of talk to my students that if they do decide to interview a relative, instead of saying, please, go off and say, I really care about you, I want to know more about you. And because in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, a lot of the people who are maybe more successful, they've had treatment or they somehow have been able to do things. But particularly the people who are on those dirt roads, under the coconut trees, way far out, in some sense, like they can be forgotten sometimes. And, to keep these things that they experience is horrific, really.
So it's about mental health. So
it's about mental health. It's also, mental health in some sense is related to compassion. It's about caring about the dignity of all people. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights really relates to psychology and health. The idea that we all should live in dignity and love.
Right. Yeah. Okay. For people my age, where we're new to all sorts of emotions, it's because we're just growing up. So jealousy, anger, happiness, excitement. I just want to know, how do we take care of our mental health? These emotions are extremes, sometimes. Jealousy, anger, injustice.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's difficult to really put it in a simple sentence, but in some sense, they're both true. In other words, you don't want to bury the emotions. So there's this idea that if you're inauthentic, or if you try to say, oh, I can't. So what happens, as an example, men who are abusive, domestic violence. A lot of times what you find the pattern with a lot of these men is they stay quiet and they suppress. They just bite their anger.
Sorry, the victim or?
The man. And so he keeps on just saying, okay, whatever, okay. She's yelling, it's just building up. And then all of a sudden, just explodes. So, that's not good because when you leave stuff in, it comes out. And so I think the thing isn't so much about the emotions. I think having emotions tells you, in some sense, if you're in a bad relationship and you're depressed, that's information. You really have to see. If you're jealous, then the thing to do isn't to say, I'm jealous, let me forget about that, or I'm broken, which could be, but to then investigate it and to say, well, maybe I feel, when you do this, I feel jealous, and let the person know. Or maybe the person says, oh, you're reading this wrong, but just communicate. So using those emotions and also feeling out, when are you at peace? When do you feel like you're one with the world? Like when I play tennis sometimes, or even table tennis, or maybe read philosophy, I feel like I'm just in the moment. Like there's no difference between me and the air. And it's like timeless. And so I think knowing when you resonate, when you're happy, when you're angry, or if you're stressed, and your setup here seems very calm, but when you're stressed, you have to take that and say, well, is this a good thing for I'm doing? How can I do it differently? And if it could be that you have, again, it can be medical. It could be that your hormones are off. It could be a medical problem, or it could be just learning new ways to handle. So I think the idea is to embrace the emotions, listen to them, and then do what you should to make yourself, because all the time, I mean, when I'm in traffic, I try to learn to be better. That's the hardest part for me, is traffic in Phnom Penh. And I hate to be stupid, but it's just, I'm on a motorcycle, and I've learned to try to just go quietly and just try to do math in my head and stuff like that. Because there's no reason, I mean, there's something called the Serenity Prayer. Do you know that?
I do not, unfortunately.
Serenity Prayer is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and to know the difference between the two.
So know what you cannot control, know what you can control, and accept both.
Yeah, so in other words, getting angry because it's raining, or getting angry because people drive like they're all on fire, isn't going to really help you too much. So what you can change is you can breathe, you can meditate, you can move. But so quite often, a lot of the problems we have is the idea that we think, so we all want to have a sense of control.
Yeah.
And that's what money is in some sense. Money gives us, I can buy what I want, I can do this. And people who don't have money, but again, there's people who you don't have to have money to have happiness. I mean, there is advantages, but there's people like monks or whatever, it is possible to not have that. But this is part of what we here in our society, we believe that we must have this to be happy. And it's not true, but again, it's hard to kind of go against society to say, I'm going to be over here by myself, and I don't care. It's very hard to kind of throw that away.
Right.
But I think the idea is to try to understand that your physical, your spiritual, and your psychological health are all together. If your psychological health is bad, your heart's going to be bad. And, people with cancer that have a better attitude do better. This helps.
Should we do an activity real quick?
Sure.
So let's say for many of my friends and I, we have to deal with the pressure of success because we're young.
You have to, or you choose to?
We kind of choose to.
Okay.
But it's up there.
Yeah.
So with all those pressure, it's a big pressure on our shoulders, I promise you, because basically our parents pay for our education in international schools and all that. So I finished my education in London. So
which school?
Regent's University, London.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a nice school.
Sure.
So all those pressures on my shoulder now to do something, to make something of our lives. So how do we take care of our mental health given the context?
That's the exercise?
That was the exercise.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a good question. And I mean, it's not easy. It's different things. And obviously, as someone who, I'm a father, I'm teaching, I'm older, I'm in a different place, and I'm not Asian, and I'm probably not going to become Asian anytime soon.
Probably not.
I like this, very cute. So I think one is to put things, so in some sense I have to, so this is one of the things I must be charming, or I must be beautiful, or I must be beautiful, or I must be slim, or I must be successful. These are things, so this is what's called cognitive psychology. We have beliefs and we believe this is true. Or there's a wonderful book that I love. It's called The Myth, what is it? It's the Drama of the Gifted Child. The drama of a gifted child is this idea of a child that the only way it gets love and comes to love itself is by getting A's and doing good things.
Mm.
And so and this is also in some sense, you look at Donald Trump or people like that, they've been ignored, and so they find ways to then say, hey, look at me, because they were denied as children. So for you, you can buy into it, and it's hard not to. It's hard to say, hey, I don't care because you have your parents. It's just like for women, there's nothing saying that they necessarily have to get married, but there's a lot of pressure in Asia saying, people will say, why aren't you married? What's wrong with you? Are you mentally ill? Or, what's wrong with you? Things like that. And so in one sense, you could be, as an American, I'm in the village and I don't really care what people think. I don't have to drink alcohol because I just don't care. So I think one is you can say I appreciate that, but I think the key to a lot of things with family, with relationships, or even with yourself is communication. Because also maybe what you think is successful, I think for a lot of parents, I'm a parent, I think for my children, if they're happy, if they're decent people, they're able to eat, that's pretty cool to me. Some parents may not, so be it. And you do what you can, but if you feel like, or maybe they tell you you're not enough, then I think that's a place for communication, and you have to figure out, again, what can you control and what can you control?
Okay. I can control my actions, my daily habits.
Well, I think the other thing that's really important in this, because it's not just you, there's people. And I know it's strange and it's hard to kind of bring all this kind of psychology stuff into Cambodia, but there is the idea that, because quite often fathers have this thing where they work, they provide, but you don't know them until they retire or something. And there's this idea that the fathers can reach out and say, I love you, I'm really proud of you, because even though there's a culture, this doesn't mean it's perfect in all ways. There's also the idea that you can say, you can sit down and not just talk about, I've done this, this, and this, and it's like, ooh, nice job. You can say, I love you, I realize that you've given a lot, and you can really be real with one another and not wait till they're at their funeral, they're old, or stuff like that.
First, that never happened. Second, that's never going to happen. Yeah, it's not happening with me and my dad. I think it's a Asian culture thing.
It is, but again, the control is he may not give you what you want, and that's okay. You're not doing it because he's going to say, oh, I really appreciate it, and he hugs you and you cry together. You're doing it maybe because it's also good for you. Because sometimes, again, if you keep stuff in, if you feel love, the saddest thing is someone who dies or someone goes through life and they don't know how much they're appreciated. So, it may seem strange to me, what's wrong with you or something? But I think you don't have to do it in a way, I love you and things like that, but you can just share, when you do this, I really appreciate it, I'm really proud of you. There's things you can say that show that you care. Mm-hmm. And, you're not going to change the culture, you may not change your father, but that's not the point. Sometimes the point in doing things is not because I'm going to end up here, but the process is important.
How do I say let's not go to parents, how about with very practical one to my friends and my team? How do I show my appreciation?
I think, you seem like an aware person, and I think, actually you do. I think telling people when they do something well and when they do something bad, there's something called the 85-15 rule from Demings. So Deming said that if there's a mistake in any organization, 85% of the mistake is due to the management. Mm. So you could say, well, that's crazy. What if the employee is drunk? Well, who hired that employee?
Always goes back.
Well, usually, there's 15% chance, but also quite often what happens in Asia, I've seen, not just there, but many places, is that you're hired and it's like you throw the fish into the fish tank and it's like, there you go. Mm. So when you hire somebody, you should watch them and you should try to mentor them and see what's going on. And you should check in time to time and not just assume I hired them and everything's good. Mm. But you shouldn't also micromanage. So I think what you can do is to say, that's a nice job. And I think to say, so there's something when you're communicating what's called assertive communication. 3 basic things. I feel blank when you blank because. So let's say that you're with your staff or you're with a wife or girlfriend. So I feel upset when you don't call me because it feels like you've forgotten me and the idea that the relationship we have is not as important. Mm. That's it.
That's like clear communication.
Well, it's telling, because she can't go off and say, no, that's not what you feel confused. they can't tell you don't feel that way. And you're not saying you have to change. You're not blaming. You're just saying, this is how I feel. So it's a role model. And if they don't communicate, that's also information. So you can take stuff not just as, hey, I'm angry, but also this is data. Maybe the person I chose isn't able to do that. Maybe they're going through a hard time. Maybe this is new and strange. But you can think about it. But the idea is, I think in some sense, you look at people that are amazing, like Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, Buddha, whoever, and they live their life in a very true, honest, and beautiful way. Mm. And so for me, the people like that, and I mean, there are a lot of people who are monks, but I remember being in Burma or Myanmar, and you could just feel this energy around him. He wasn't just hanging. He was there, and you just felt like this electricity, and it's real. And there's something, when you're real, and also, again, you have control over that. You can't make people change. Right. And so I think when you're straightforward with people and honest, and when someone does something, you just try to think about it. Because, again, another thing that's really important, I always talk a lot about, is the golden rule: treat others. And that if your father comes up and says, I'm really proud of you, or, you really turned out better than I ever imagined, and it just really makes me feel good about my life, which is powerful to hear that. And so you know how you feel. And so if you say that to those two people that are watching us or whoever, not in those words, but just small things. Again, quite often in a relationship with women don't like also, oh, you have a car. That's exciting. Just giving them a note or a flower and saying, I think about you, it means more, because women, like in general, tend to like small things to show that you care. Mm. Yeah. There's one woman, so I have one affirmation. Whereas men are more like, oh, take us to the game, woo! It's just a different kind of mindset. So I think just kind of I think in some sense it comes back to Buddha and the Buddhism, which is being in the moment. And there's this idea that you just try to breathe, and I mean, it is very difficult because I've been at pagodas and I'm not good at that. But if you live in the past, you feel depressed or angry. And if you live in the future, you feel anxious.
Anxious, yes.
And if you live in the present, there's this idea that let's say you're very depressed,
No, it's okay.
and suicidal, but you can still walk across the street, buy some lovely green tea and drink it and cry into your green tea. So in other words, the idea, if I'm playing tennis, but I'm thinking about my kids or traffic, I'm not playing tennis. So this is, in some sense, what Hindu and what Buddhism is. You live in the moment. And so when you talk to me, I think you are pretty much there when you're doing this, which is really cool. When you're listening, you really have to listen because it's going to go all over the place. But also when you're driving, like sometimes it's cool. I must say, I feel very fortunate and blessed to be in Cambodia. I mean, every country's got problems, obviously, but there's just I always realize that I'm a stranger in a strange land. And I'm driving, and I don't like Prahok or the Kapi particularly, but sometimes I'll smell incense and I look and it's just like, because I'm American. I mean, I grew up in the deep South, and I smell incense. I see men with their head shaved wearing saffron robes. I see the pagodas, and it's something from a George Orwell novel. It's just so amazing to be here, and I feel blessed. I mean, sometimes no matter who you are, if you have your health, I mean, you can't just say everything's good and be Pollyannish. But there's an idea that, it seems like you have good staff, you have dogs. I mean, sometimes I just hold the kitten and you just feel that life in your hand, and it's just beautiful. So kind of living in those moments, not going, because the problem with being successful is you're always living in the future and I must do this. But being in the moment and having plans for what you're going to do, but being in the moment makes it much more enjoyable in a sense. It's like when you eat. There's an exercise that you can do. Basically, you take a raisin, mm-hmm. and instead of just swallowing it, you eat it for 5 minutes, and you just taste the texture. And
5 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. But you enjoy that. In other words, quite often, probably all of us here to some extent, we're on the phone, where you're thinking about, I got to do this, I got to do this. But when you eat, you eat. Mm. And so there's some wonderful restaurants here. I mean, the thing that's really surprised me about Phnom Penh in particular is there's some restaurants I love. And you have better coffee than America, as far as I can tell. So, I mean, I really, like this morning I went to a place, and I really enjoy the coffee, and I really try to back off from the computer and just enjoy that and be in the moment. Mm. And in some sense, it's the same thing with your father. So it doesn't have to be that you go off and tear and hold, but it can be that you appreciate what he is and what he's given you. And a lot of what you have is from him. In many ways, you are him in many ways. And, to love yourself is also to love him.
We'll find out in a couple of years. Not a couple of years, probably like 30 years, if I can reach that level. Anyways, a side note, a very interesting question I would like to ask. So as a psychologist, usually you're listening to people. So is it weird that now we're listening to you?
A little bit, in some extent, but it's not that weird because as an instructor, if I don't talk too much, it's going to go south pretty fast. So I would like to. Actually, I've done it before, but it's very hard in Cambodia. I decided I'm not going to teach anything. I'm just going to ask questions the whole class, but that's very hard to do and make them answer everything. I can do it, but it's very anxious. So it is, in a sense, being one-to-one, but you're not really asking. But it's not as weird because you're not asking me about my father or about me. You're asking more information, which kind of comes back to like people come to my office like, all right, so what's on the exam? Or explain that. So it's not that weird in a sense. In a sense, sitting face to face like this is different, but it's also with the curtains. I mean, these colors are very calming. And everything here, beside the microphone overall.
Zen.
Yeah, there's a certain zen to it. And so, I mean, the flag is very unique and stuff. I understand why it's here. But most of the stuff, even the lights, it's just a very kind of calming. I mean, that's why you have all the stuff here.
Just to get you comfortable?
Yeah. Well, also for yourself. I mean, why would you want to sit on a park bench with pigeons and interview people?
True. So, what are the misconceptions in psychology? What do people often get wrong?
Well, I guess the main one I encounter, and it seems like a joke, but people always say it, oh, you're a psychologist, you can read my mind.
I think of that.
Well, people think that, but so a psychologist is not going to read your mind unless they have a special power. But, I mean, and also, even if I could, there's this cartoon called The Far Side, which is, I love. It's kind of my humor, but it's like this person invents this device to understand what dogs say. And so you can hear the dogs and dogs going, hey, 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 hey. I mean, once you know, it's just overwhelming. Like once I started learning Khmer and I was on the buses traveling, it was just, how much did that cost? Where'd you get that? And it was just like, sometimes you don't really want to do that. So, but you can't. I mean, I can look at people. I mean, we do it to some extent. Everybody's a psychologist. When you look at someone, you look at their clothes, you look at their car, you make judgments. It may not be based on theory, but you're looking at everybody, and then they're looking at you also thinking, that sweater or whatever it is, they're thinking something about you. So people see me, they see I don't have hair, they see I'm white, they see that I'm dressed a certain way, they're making judgments about me, right or wrong. So they're not reading my mind necessarily, but we're all looking at people or sizing up. Oh, you're a female. That means you're a mother. That means you're soft. That means you're emotional, whatever it is.
So what was your first impression of us, particularly me?
You seem very chill and just very warm. You're well suited to this because I think it's interesting because it's a different age. I mean, quite often people in business, they're doing things like buying real estate, buying land, doing those things. And so this is very modern in a way, although you have the other business, but it seems like it's more of a passion. And also, I mean, there's a certain amount of respect I have to have because you're not a psychologist, but whoever you're talking to, different people you're talking to, you're listening to people. And your success, no matter how genius someone is, if your questions don't allow, it's going to turn south very fast. Right. And basically for 2 hours, you're probably, with me, unfortunately, I'm talking about your father, which is messing stuff up. But
it's totally okay.
But, you're not thinking about, oh, I forgot, I got to fix the toilet when I go home. So in some sense, you have a really nice job because, and also you're not on TV in the sense of like someone having to entertain and interview. So you're able to really listen, which is really a gift. And so I think if you take this to your relationship with your friends, with your parents, it's an amazing skill. Because so often we talk, but we don't listen. Another misconception, something interesting to me, which I will probably talk about in my class, is communication. So communication is what's really important. So, for instance, there's a difference between process versus content. So let's take an example that you have a husband and wife, and the husband keeps on throwing his socks or his clothes on the floor. And one night the wife says, look, your socks are on the floor, and they get into a big argument. It's just like, I was just getting dressed, I was going to pick them up later. They argue for 3 hours about the socks on the floor, but she's not upset about the socks. And they're arguing about something that has no relevance to why she's upset, because they're talking about content. So if you go deeper, and psychologists that are very good, you can go deep enough where you scare people because you're saying something about them they didn't realize about themselves. So in that situation, what she's basically saying is, I feel like you don't care about me because when I say things to you that matter to me, you don't listen. So I feel like I'm alone, and I feel like life is very difficult because I felt like we were a couple.
Wow. They're intrigued too,
Very intrigued.
But if you do this in therapy, it can really scare people sometimes. You have to be careful with that stuff because it's like, so here it's kind of fun, but when someone's coming in and they're depressed or stuff. So yeah, it's very powerful. But and in some sense, the thing I have come to appreciate, which is cool because I am a psychologist, and in America, I worked in prisons. I did testing for people who were on death row to see if they were mentally ill or they could be put to death. I worked with couples. I did group therapy. I did a lot of very interesting things. I was working in emergency rooms. And then all of a sudden I come here, and I'm just here just chilling for a year, going from Australia to Indonesia to Singapore, hopefully to get to Bhutan, which I can't get to. And then now, so I was just thinking this other day, so it was a strange term that I just kind of took a break from life and wasn't making money and things like that. But I feel really fortunate in some sense. So I probably could have more money in America, but I'm not sure I would have more stuff because, the whole economics is different. But in some sense, a lot of the things I do now, like last night I was talking about social justice and feminism. And so particularly at my last school, and somewhat at the school I'm at now, my English is pretty good, and I'm reasonably good. So I've taught history, I've taught gender, I've taught political science, I've taught stats, I've taught organization, marketing, philosophy, sociology, and psychology. So all these things really are interesting. So what I find for myself is that when you look at your memory, you're basically building kind of bundles or, and you connect those things. So all of a sudden, when I understand one thing with sociology, I can relate to politics and then back to psychology, and it makes like a bigger bundle that makes a lot more sense. You can kind of just piece the world together. And so even though I may not ever be able to buy the car of my dreams or have whatever you see on the MTV videos that people want, I feel very blessed in some sense because it's just particularly I'm trying to write a book on philosophy. It's very interesting to me, and it's just very enjoyable. And I feel very fortunate really to Cambodia, whether it's good or bad, that I've had the opportunity to really explore my mind. And also, actually, as he mentioned before, I feel very fortunate because at university I can play tennis, play badminton, I can play basketball. A good chance in America, it's going to be really hard. So, it's really, in some sense, it's white privilege or it's location, whatever, but I feel, it's really nice for me. I really appreciate that. I'm very thankful to that and feel, in a sense, when I try to step back and not think about traffic or kids and homework and stuff, it's just, I feel very blessed.
You said you're writing a book.
Trying to. I'm not spending enough time, but yes.
And you're into philosophy as well. What philosophy ideology do you subscribe to?
Philosophy overall, what it's kind of taught me, and I think the reason why I've kind of gravitated towards it, I think my mind, I'm naturally, because I like chess, and it's just the way I am. So because when I first got philosophy, it's like, what is this? I'd taken one class, but I didn't really know it. So once I got it, it kind of just really resonated, and I really enjoyed it. So in one sense, I'm an existentialist. So existentialism is kind of more of a soft, but it's basically saying, it's kind of, instead of religion, it's saying, what is the purpose of man? What should we be, and why are we here?
We are here to, first easy one is procreate. Second one is to be important. So that could be status, resources, and all of it goes back into improving the livelihood of our species.
That sounds good. That works. In many ways, I agree with some of that, yeah. It's probably true as a thing, but I don't think we have to procreate. In some sense, the irony is that as we procreate, we make a worse world for our grandchildren.
Why is that?
Everybody makes 2 or 3 kids. I mean, trees, global warming. I mean, Cambodia are not in that same situation, but as China, India, and these countries keep on making people, it becomes exponential.
That's why they have like rules now, regulations on one-child policy, which they took out. You know that?
But even, yeah, I know. And then now it's 2-child, I think. And I think you can probably go around it also. But, I mean, I think there is that push. But I think, so, I mean, there is something, that's all for all species. I mean, in some sense, that's for cats. Feed yourself and then have babies. But as people, I don't know. I mean, what you're saying does capture a lot, and I think it does fit, particularly for Cambodian stuff. But then there's the idea, to be able to photocopy yourself and do something that's able to feed yourself. Because if you're poor and you're not poor, you've already kind of moved up ahead. But there is also the idea, I mean, it's from Covey. In some sense, you start with the end and you move backward. So you think about when I die, what do I want people to say about me? What is it that I want to be really?
I would say I want to be remembered. It's normal.
Well, Hitler's remembered.
You have to go to the extremes one.
How do you want to be
Remembered as good.
Okay.
And
Whatever.
I actually want good is not enough. I think should be useful. I provide some long-lasting value to the human race, I guess.
Well, I would like to. I mean, I think we all do, because even the people that are poor, I mean, unless you're a troll under a bridge, I mean, you have people. We all, in some sense, are connected. I mean, even the people working in the factory, those girls are sending money back to their family. If they perish, I mean, they're sacrificing their life. I don't think they choose to, but they're sacrificing their life to help their parents. I mean, they're the social security for their parents. And so it may not be to the extent that you want, but I think that's, that is, but it's interesting to think about, because I feel lucky, not just, I mean, it's really nice I've been invited here and get to have the lovely drink and things, but also I have kids. That's changed my perspective, and they're quite young. I have kids. But also having students, because I think in some sense, one of the things I talk about sometimes is that if you look at Denmark or Sweden, they're very unique countries. So they have very high taxes, and the people can't be as wealthy, but they can't be as poor. But you look at there's a kind of thing that resonates with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the dignity of people, and the idea that they renegotiate union salaries every year, and they do all these. And actually, if you go to Sweden before, when you get beer outside, it costs $8, but in the grocery store it costs $1. The reason is basically they don't want you drinking outside and acting stupid. So it's just a lot of policies that try to help the society to get along and have boring newspapers, I guess, which is what you want.
For people to keep the honor.
Well, not only to keep the honor, but to share it and to allow other people. So one thing also, I was talking about social justice and feminism last night, that's fascinating is, I mean, feminism, I think that's misunderstood, but the idea is that from a woman's perspective, you would never put like a lot of money into a military or into police. It'd be more into healthcare, into infant care, and to helping poor people not be homeless and things like that. And I think, it's difficult to do that when the world around you is not that way, but we can kind of imagine, we talk about heaven, we think about whatever it is, but I can imagine, to me, I guess I have the idea that if we can't create heaven here, why should God come down and say, you messed it up, all right, here you go, there you go. In some sense, I think we have the obligation to make heaven here.
So you talk about feminism. I want to know, where do you stand? Do you think women can lead?
Of course. I mean, if you study management, there's something called basically using emotion. So women are much more in touch with emotions. And the reason why we don't think of women as being leaders is because we have a certain view of women as soft, as having children, as not being kind of go for the throat. But again, you look at Margaret Thatcher, you look at people, women have that ability, and so women don't have the history, they don't have the background because they haven't been allowed to. They've had kids, they've been in the kitchen. But they're people. I mean, their brain is not really much different than you. their bodies, the only thing they can't do necessarily is run a football through a wall, or they're not as strong, but that doesn't allow them. So you see women who can be just as cutthroat, which I don't think is good. I think the strength of women is being in touch with their own emotions and relating to employees to help people feel better about their jobs. And there's one type of thing, which is you can focus on the job, the task, or you can focus on the person, or you can do a combination of. So I think women have brains not much really different than humans, and they're more in touch with human emotions. I don't know if they're better, but I can imagine a better world, because women don't tend to use kind of power. I mean, sometimes they do, but they don't use power. Usually women aren't going to go off and have a war necessarily. You're not going to find a lot of bar fights with women and stuff like that. So I think they can lead. And also, there's something from Carol Gilligan which says that in morality development, men tend to be focused on rules and justice. And women tend to be more focused on caring and giving. So if a poor woman steals money for her baby, a male society will put her in jail, which may help her to change and go, you broke the rules. But a female society would say, well, this is not right, but it's also not right what we've let her become. And so there's the idea that you can solve things, as many countries do, with military might. But, as Cambodia knows very well, small countries don't invade big countries. It just doesn't work that way. Little people don't walk up and just hit big people unless they're, superheroes. And so finding a way to be human, because what makes us different than lions, cats, and dogs is that we have brains, and we also know how we feel when people hurt us. And so when we become in touch with what we are, we become in touch with other people. And I think women are able to do that. I think as society, obviously women have strengths. There's a balance. I don't think it's all female energy and no male energy, obviously, but there's a balance. And having a society where women have more money means there's less pressure on you. So your sisters can just kind of get married or whatever, but all the pressure's on your shoulders. Imagine that there's equal and they're expected, and you don't have to just do all this as a male. As a male, you don't have to earn all the money, and the wife is getting all the love of the kids. And you have smaller armies, less police, less poor people. It's hard to kind of get there, but that's kind of more of the values of feminism, I guess.
Do you think it's harder for women to date in Cambodia?
I don't know if they think about it, but I look in my village, I look at the garment factories, and I have a certain view. It's an interesting question, but right now, most women in the countryside are getting dinner ready. They've gone to the market. And so, the women, we joke because they gossip and they buy clothes and they buy makeup, but what do you expect them to do? They're at home, they have babies, the man's a motodop or whatever it is, so they learn to be that way. But I think we all want to do what you're doing and what your staff is doing. We want to find, there's this idea that doing something, changing the world, helping people matters. That's what you want to do, besides making money. Because I always tell my students, do you care most about money? Sure, okay, great. So I want you to dig a hole, and when the hole is full, I want you to fill it up, and I'll pay you a lot of money. See how long you stay. So what you're doing here in particular, because this is your kind of dream and this is what resonates with you, is you're doing something that matters to you. Yeah. And then you're sharing with other people and hoping that it resonates with them also. And that will also make you successful, which is cool also, but you'll be doing something that matters. And I think, and I'm sure your father and we all do it, but I think for women it's difficult because I don't need to tell my wife I'm stronger than her. And so women know that, if the husband's job changed, they're going to move. And women know if the husband gets drunk, women don't usually beat up men too much. They may nag and stuff. So I think it's difficult to be black in America years ago. It's difficult to be Cham maybe in Cambodia. People don't have to think about it, but you're aware of. If you're a disabled person, you don't always go, I'm disabled. But, when you come to stairs, it's difficult. But we don't look at stairs and think about disabled people. Or a joke I make with my student, which is not very funny, I know, but I say, what superpower do homeless people have?
The ability to not care.
I doubt that, but the superpower they have is they're invisible. Unfortunately, it doesn't help them very much. Because after being invisible, they have no other superpowers. So they can't go off and defeat people and do things. So, it's funny, but it's not funny. And so, they learn to live in the moment. I mean, one of the things, particularly in feminism, when I talk gender, is we look at people, women that are sex workers, and we say, this is your fault, you're a broken woman, straight coat. But no girl who's 14 years old would say, gee, this is what I want to do. No one would choose that, but we blame them, just like we blame a woman. Well, why are you focusing on makeup? Why aren't you doing this? Yet, so there's this quote from Simone de Beauvoir that says, a woman's situation is not the result of her character. Her character is the result of her situation. All women live in a patriarchal world. So, I mean, I can bow to her or the women in my class and say, if you look around, what did women make? Did they make Angkor Wat? Did they make watches? Did they make phones? I mean, and men, you look at the army, you look at the government, you look at the people that are wealthy, so they're aware of that. They don't have to think about it all the time. But, people who are disabled know about stairs. They know about being blind. They understand that. They don't want to think about the time. But so I think being a woman and being at home, so a dog isn't aware, but a woman, I mean, she tries to find enjoyment, but I think it's difficult to stay at home, cook food, buy vegetables, and change diapers.
Right. So you mentioned you have a wife. So as a psychologist, do you use psychological tricks?
Tricks. Tricks are for kids.
Let's not call tricks. Let's call psychological concepts to improve your relationship.
I try to some extent, but I mean, part of it is she is from the village, and so so I'll mention things, but basically, I guess the only trick is to try to, I mean, we've kind of done that typical thing, which is I'm working, and it's also, I think when you have this, because I'm older, male, American, and white, and educated, all these things, which are different than her, but I think what I try to do in the end is try to help her to find meaning and encourage her, and I try to the best of my ability to try to be clear and try to encourage her to be better. But I think all relationships are going to be difficult. Even if you have two guys living in the same room and they're watching football, there's always going to be problems. And then when you have people that are so different and there's kind of a power struggle over money, sex, and things, it's going to be much more difficult. But yes, I don't know if I'm using tricks, but when I'm able to kind of be in the moment, to try to just be in the moment and communicate, I think is important.
So you don't use tricks is a bad word, but I think.
Well, yeah, you can do things, and you can do things, and you can mess with people and play with them and stuff like that. So, it's kind of cruel in a way to do that, I think. But no, even in psychology, I don't think you really should use tricks. I mean, you can get more out of people, you can do things to do that, but at some point, I do believe in karma. I think, if you do these things, it will come back.
So what I meant was some psychological tricks, as in, so Lita is reading a book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and one of the concepts was don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Well,
that's being in the moment. In other words, yeah, so that's the same thing I talked about before, and it's the same thing Buddha said. If you're complaining, it's going to be about the past. Don't blame people, and don't go back in the past. Living in the moment, and so, trying to live in the moment and not worry about the future, which is hard with kids, obviously. But it's more easy with the kids because the kids, it's like your dogs. They're pure, they're simple, and they're developing. And I think the main thing you can do with kids is, you want to give them toys and stuff, but it's just love. And I think in some sense, we get caught up in our lives, and I do. I know she don't like, because last night I was doing one thing, I'm doing this today, and she's like, what on earth are you doing? And so, yeah, I know that's not cool, but then it's hard for me to say, okay, well, I won't do that. I'll just come and, drink beer or whatever. I don't know. It's just different. So it does create, but yeah, I'm aware of what I do, that I am kind of playing tennis and just reading and doing so many things. So that does create barriers. So yeah, I'm aware of that, but then I have to then decide what can I sacrifice to then, but it's hard because, she is in the village and stuff, so it is very difficult. But I think we have to so I try to find ways, like last weekend, we went to go see a ghost movie, which is not my thing, but it was American, so that was okay. So that was nice, but trying to find times where we can not be kind of in that usual mode and stuff like that.
Is it The Conjuring?
Yep.
Yeah, we saw it too. It was pretty bad.
Bad?
Yeah. we all saw it.
Oh, you did?
It was pretty bad.
Well, what's cool about it, what I liked about that show is that it's based on reality. Well, no, that family, those two people and the two stars, they're actual real people. And these things, these three movies they've done have been experiences. I mean, one's very famous, one in Pennsylvania. They're like real. So, I mean, you can disagree with them, but I mean, it's really kind of creepy that, you know, they did all this stuff. I mean, they're real Ghostbusters.
We saw the real the couple, the Ghostbusters. Yeah. Pretty cool. Okay. Okay. I lost my train of thought.
Oh, so did you like the movie, or did you find it strange?
I like the romance. and a bit of the jump scares, but besides that, I think there's three producers. Maybe I feel like there's some guy wants to do it that way, and then the other guy is trying to do it this way. I feel like they're all over the place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they try to focus on too many things. So they develop the first family, and then they jump into another family.
Yeah.
And then they jump into the romance, and it's all over the place.
Yeah, and there's the priest. Well, I think what it is for me, it's different because I can see that it's basically a historical movie. It's not really a ghost movie, it's a historical movie from Western Pennsylvania.
Right. I didn't expect that. That's why, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's very different from the kind of the Korean or the Thai, Khmer ghost movies, yeah.
You did enjoy it.
I found it, I mean, it's not my kind of movie. I mean, there's another movie I went to go see by myself, which is much more my speed, called Stealing, which is much more my flavor. So I tend to like stuff that's very deep and provocative and offbeat and stuff. So it was okay. I didn't, because if I went to go see like a typical just kind of local kind of thing, it would be just kind of, because, I don't know, it's not my speed. So I don't usually watch horror movies. More would be psychological horror.
What's your favorite movie?
I was talking about one today. I don't know about actually, there's a lot of difference, but one of my favorites, but no one knows it.
Split. I was trying to get this. Split.
Is 13 Conversations About One Thing. So it starts off, actually, it's all dialogue. It's very deep. But so there's a scene in a bar, and there's a lawyer played by Matthew McConaughey, and he's celebrating. He said, "I just put a bad man in jail. Drinks are on me." And there's this man at the bar, Alan Arkin, and he's just kind of down. And, "Hey, what's with you? I got you a drink. Aren't you happy?" And he says, "I knew a happy man once. He won $2 million. Lottery. It destroyed his life." So the whole movie is all these lives, and so it's very deep, and it's about life, and it's about kind of karma. It's just a very deep movie. But I also love Casablanca. It's very old, but it's just very classic. So, but usually I like movies that are very deep and real. And actually, the one I show in class, which I'm going to show in psychology, related to Khmer Rouge, is Schindler's List. So it really deals with one man. And he's a womanizer, he's an alcoholic, he's an average man. But for whatever reason, during the Holocaust in Europe, he decides that he's going to lose all of his money to save the lives of 1,100 of his workers.
Why?
That's a good question. Well, all of a sudden he just realized that these people mattered, and it wasn't about money, and he got to know them. So there's this idea that if you come to know a cat or a person that doesn't matter to you, once it matters, like your dogs, if they're on the street, you would just drive by them. But once you know them, it's just very different. So these workers were people he knew, and he had a connection.
Or it's the other way around. He was an alcoholic and I would say a deadbeat because he has no purpose. And when the Holocaust happened, there's a chance to show up.
Well, his purpose was, and he said in the very beginning, was to become successful. And this was because he knew during war, and he could have made a lot of money. But he didn't. Actually, he died quite poor. But if you go to Israel today, there's a tree, and it's planted, and it's with his name, and he's remembered, and there's a movie about him, there's books. And so I think there's the idea of being successful, but successful is not always money, houses, and cars. And again, you can look at Nelson Mandela. I mean, eventually he does, but I think when you look at people, and I think this job, has the opportunity as it expands or how your country changes to really touch people.
Going back to what you said about being, you consider yourself as educated, and by coming in Cambodia, I mean in a most respectful way, by being in Cambodia and all that, how do you find someone who meet your intellectual needs?
So I have a very close friend. So one of the things I'm very thankful about Cambodia compared to my home, where I'm from the deep south, is that there's a lot of people from all over the world. So I've met friends from Malaysia, Thailand, Holland, England, and I love that. It's really, in particular, a lot of Asians, obviously. And it's just wonderful. And also a lot of my students and my people. I enjoy meeting different people. I love when I went to Burma. I always want to know, how do people die? How do they marry? How do they go to the bathroom? How do they eat? It's just fascinating. People do the same thing, but they all have their own different ways. Left hand, right hand, chopsticks, whatever. And so, I guess my closest friend back in America, I've known him since I was 14. So we kind of grew up together, and we had a lot in common. But my friend here, the one I'm very close to, so he knows philosophy well, and we just talk, I guess, about stuff. And then I have other friends, like I have a friend very close from Malaysia, and we talk. So people that stimulate me, and we listen. I guess we do this, but instead of the microphones and the cameras and the lovely trees, we just kind of do it without that. And we just kind of talk back and forth, I guess. And there's actually someone at my job now who, I guess people who know something about particularly philosophy or political science and sociology, it's always interesting just to kind of bounce stuff off. Because even if I know truth, which I don't, it doesn't matter. If you know all the answers to the world and you have all the money, but you're on Pluto, you'd be miserable.
Right. So you're lucky to have them.
I feel blessed. I'm in many ways, I could have probably been happy in America. You hope that wherever you go, there you are. So if you're happy here, you're happy there. But I have a different life here. In America, I was, in many ways, I guess, typical in the sense I had a sports car. I'm buying stuff. I'm watching TV. On Sunday, I'm watching football, all that stuff. I probably would, but it's just hard to watch my teams here. They're not really popular. So, yeah, I think in some sense, I do feel, the weather is such that I can play tennis all year round. The people like him really cool, and they allow me to play basketball. Where in America, hey, out of here.
They allow you to play basketball? So
well, they're better than me. I'm okay, but they're nice.
What do you mean they allow you? You're not allowed to play back in the States?
It's technically I'm allowed to, but if you're playing with a group of guys that are about 25, you're not gonna make the cut. They're gonna be like,
true. You're just faster.
I used to play when I was younger. Even then, they'd be like, out of here. You're, stop it. It was nothing against me, but, they're tall and they play basketball every day. I don't. And there's like nothing personal. Go over there.
Okay.
But if you play with friends, there's some places like here where you just have friends. But here, some of the guys are worse than me and some are equal and some are better. But it's very nice, And I think there's a competitiveness here, but there's also a kind of beauty of including people and being respectful, which is really nice. And I appreciate that because there's a lot about America. So I don't think America is the best. I don't think it's the worst. It's one country. But there is that sense which you have embraced on your shoulders of, I have to do certain things, or there's this competitiveness, which I think can be very destructive. You can still be competitive, I guess, but you can embrace it as a way of just resonating and being happy. And there's the idea, like you can make a business and try to make money, or you can make a business and watch people coming up. This is the most amazing tea I've ever had. And as they enjoy it, more customers come.
From where were you based in the United States?
I'm from the deep south, which is, so in some ways the heat here is not so bad for me. It rains a little bit too much. The river, so my city is actually very much like Phnom Penh beside the Asians. It's Memphis. So it's on the Mississippi River. Mm-hmm. In the summer it gets up, let's see, what would be here, like 37. It's got a lot of mosquitoes. It's relatively poor. It's like 70% black African Americans. Not quite, it's probably a little bit smaller, but it's, you have cotton fields nearby, and so, it's smaller than here. It's not quite as cosmopolitan, obviously, but there's a lot of commonalities.
What was the culture like? So I do know from a friend that Boston, it was more of like a conservative area, with they give a lot of priority to studying. A lot of them are students, and it's more slow and more cooperative.
I just agree. Actually, I did my internship at Boston University.
How was it?
Oh, I loved it. It opened up. I think partly the fact that I went to Boston University to do my internship. So I had a relationship with somebody. I'd never eaten raw fish before, and something. All of a sudden I started, so being in Boston, all of a sudden it's just like, so I wasn't happy in Memphis, but it was like being a small kind of fish tank. And Boston, all of a sudden, there were different people, different food, different music, alternative, all this stuff, and it just really, I loved it. And there's a radio station that I loved. It was just all this kind of alternative, indie type stuff, and it allowed me to meet different people, and all of a sudden, eventually, I will then travel at some point in my life. So, but Boston tends to be liberal. It's very fast. People drive very fast. They walk very fast. Education is very important, but you also have a group of people who drink, watch. They have this accent, Paktakan, Haviyad. They kind of watch the Boston Bruins go Bruins, and they're just kind of, blue-collar people and things like that. So, and you also have different parts. You have the Brazilian people, you have the blacks, you have the whites, and it's just an amazing conglomerate of a lot of people coming together, but very crowded, very expensive, very cold. But also, if I went back, I might want to live there again. I probably couldn't go back home because you never go home again. But Memphis is beautiful, a lot of trees, very slow, like a big town. But there's not. It's just. Like one of the problems I have with Cambodia is just so hard for me to get a book, so I have to get stuff on my Kindle. And there's not as many. So a lot of the movies I like are going to be indie foreign movies and things like that. So the cultures and the music I like is going to be more independent and weird stuff. So Memphis is more gospel, rap, and stuff like that. And so growing up there, I appreciate it. It's a beautiful city. It will always be my home, but it's just like a big town.
Why do you come here?
So actually, interesting. What's a little piece of dust? Wow. So
I'm beginning to suspect you have ADHD.
It seems like it. Actually, it seems like it because my mind. One of the reasons I stopped writing on the board is when I'm writing on the board, I would write nonsense. And I would look at it and go, "What's that?" Because my mind is doing, and I'm very strange in the sense when I walk in, I'll see geckos, and I'm just really like. So yeah, I do this all the time. I'm very aware of my environment. I'm aware of where I am, and it makes it. So I try to be in the moment. My mind is very much, and even when I'm driving, I'm thinking. I'm doing math problems, solving stuff, writing the book, and so that's the way I am.
It's okay.
But it just seems, I'm used to it, so it's normal to me. But so I came here, so I met someone online. I'd never been out of America, very typical American, didn't have a passport, and just kind of watching Monday Night Football, buying sports cars and stuff like that.
Man United?
No, not watching sports. No, I'm American. I don't watch soccer, but Pittsburgh fan. But so I eventually traveled to meet someone, and then I went and met in Hong Kong. I really liked Hong Kong. It was just so exotic and just different. It was just everywhere you looked, there were Chinese people and Chinese food. So I like that, and then it kind of whetted my interest. And then I eventually went with my mother to Burma, I guess it was, and I loved. It's actually my favorite country. I wanted to live in Burma, but they didn't want me. At the time, I was there, the first time I went, I think Aung San Suu Kyi was under house arrest, and so this is like around 2000 or 2003. Actually, when I first came to Cambodia, first time I was here, it was just after or just following the riots that you had in 2003.
Right.
Very different city. So, but yeah, and all of a sudden there's just this whole world. And I do have this idea that I think if you don't travel or you don't know the world, you can read about it and watch movies, but traveling and meeting people, it just makes you richer, and I feel blessed because I could imagine myself having, the sport. I had a really cool third generation RX-7 with 2 turbochargers and stuff like that. But as happy as I was driving the car with loud music and stuff, there's something. Having kids, being in this culture, having students, it's just a different life, but it's equally, if not better. I think. It's hard to be poor and to be a moto-dot, but I think either change or find ways to be thankful for what you have.
Now, I really want to know, do you find it fulfilling to teach?
I do.
Really?
Yeah. I feel very thankful. In one sense, one of the things I'm thankful for, well, my students there, but is that the students here, there's an irony, which is people always ask me, which are better students, Americans or Asians? Khmer. And I say, well, Americans are not particularly nice, really. They're not bad, but they just kind of come and do their thing, have their headphones or whatever. But they're pretty good about doing homework. Here, they're really nice, really sweet, but they don't really do homework. But it feels like, I don't know, it just feels like there's probably a lot of me, not exactly, but it feels like I fit a niche, and it just feels like, particularly if I talk about psychology, the Khmer Rouge, or depression, So I'm going to have people interview the relatives about the Khmer Rouge, and I'll talk about gender. It feels like all of a sudden it just feels real and it feels purposeful. I mean, I could teach in America, and it's not that the students are bad, but there's just a lot of Americans in America, and there's a lot of psychology classes and things like that. And so, and the people here, they really are, I mean, like you, I mean, nothing against Howard Stern or people in America and stuff, but it's just a different kind of energy.
Right.
Because in America, it would be more kind of hard. I mean, that doesn't have to be, but it can be just very, Americans can be very direct and hard-hitting sometimes, which is, I'm America, I can do that.
You get a pass. I would like to shift our attention to a bit of mental health, more information this time. I'll start with, what is depression?
It's certainly not nice. So depression, so the book basically there's a book called the DSM-5, which stands for Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. And so basically it works like a Chinese menu in America, which is 3 from column A, 2 from column B. So in a general sense, depression is a psychological disease where a person is feeling hopeless, sad, and tearful, thinking about suicide, and they can't get out of it. But basically the way you really diagnose it is it has to last for 3 months. It can't be because of drinking alcohol. So if you're depressed because your parents died or you lost your house, that's not depression. If it stays there, so this is something that lasts. It's not just because your cat died or something. And it's something that comes on like COVID, and you're looking really at symptoms. I mean, in some sense, it's depressed. The word, a rum cream crumb is that, but you're looking at people who think about suicide, even if they don't do it. They're going to be crying, a couple times a week. Not all of these, but the cognitive part is they feel like I'm worthless. No matter what they do, they got a B+. They think, oh, I'm terrible. Glass is always half empty or empty. They tend to always worry about the future. They think about the past. They either sleep too much, too little, eat too much, eat as a ways to feel, or not eat because they just don't have energy. They can't concentrate, and so it's pervasive. They can't read, they can't really connect with people, and even when they do, they don't appreciate it. So in some sense, you have something called anhedonia. So you can take something as beautiful as matcha, given by a lovely person
Really like
for
matcha.
free. I think there's a moment, so I have my edamame, so I've learned, I can eat edamame, and each one, it's beautiful to me, I don't know. Like talking to you, this will be something I remember. And I can remember your hair, even though I don't see you have a really cool haircut, your smile, your energy, and, hopefully this will stay with me as part of who I am. And I can enjoy that, but for someone who has depression, they could go see the most amazing movie, have presumably romantic sex, eat expensive food, and there's no pleasure. It's like gray.
Right. Is it because I'm a very practical guy and a scientific guy? So is it because their dopamine receptors are fried?
Good question. Fried. Not necessarily. Well, it's not so much that receptors, but there's the idea of reuptake. So it's being sucked out. So actually, one of the things I'm making my students do now is what's called a biological or physiological approach. So there is that, and that but the question is, does that cause it, or is that a consequence of someone being depressed?
Oh, I'm not sure about this one.
Because if you live alone and you have no friends and there's nothing to live for, probably you're not going to have much dopamine. You're not exercising and you're just kind of watching whatever it is on TV or something. So for someone who's a psychiatrist, medical, that is the cause, give them medicine, problem fixed to some extent. So if someone from maybe a personality, there's the idea that people who are passive in the sense that they let life come to them, they're like a leaf going down the river, and then people take advantage of them, and they never speak up in relationships. They're miserable or angry, but they bite back their anger, and they're in a job they don't like, they're in a relationship they don't like, and they end up feeling depressed. That'd be more personality. Behavioral would be that you keep on you're doing things, you're drinking, you're hanging out with people that don't really care about you, you're doing work that continually makes you feel useless and bad, and so you feel bad. So again, if you're being beaten in a relationship or you're in a job you hate, you probably should feel depressed. That's information for you. But then cognitive would be basically the idea that everything is good, you have a good job, but you just see, oh, I'm not as successful as I'm supposed to be, oh, my wife doesn't love me, or I'm jealous. And so these all come together. So which one is more prominent? I don't know. Certainly sociocultural plays. For me, I tend to take more of a sociocultural perspective, whether it be homosexuality, depression, because a lot of it, if your environment, so at the hospital I worked in America, they did something called based on Morita. So Morita was a Japanese psychiatrist around the turn of the century. So a lot of times we either look at thinking, we look at emotions, Gestalt, we look at biology, we look at environment. He looked specifically at behavior, and so what he did, which is Zen Buddhism, he said that so he took a group of people who had cancer and they were going to die, and he had them climb Mount Fuji. The reason he did it wasn't to say who would die and fall off the mountain, but basically you can't climb the mountain and think about cancer because you won't be able to do it. And so you're going to die, and we're all going to die, but the sense is that each moment, there's the idea from Schindler's List, is that one moment of life is a moment of life. And that so there's this idea that when Buddha dies, he enjoys or he embraces the feeling. So if you just only look for the high points and the pleasure and the money, there's another thing which I love. There's this idea that life is like a train that we're on. And for most people, they're looking at their watches and they're pacing back and forth, waiting for the destination. They get off the train, they get back on 2 minutes later, and they're looking at their watch. The problem is, life is not the destination. Life is the train ride.
The journey.
The journey. And so if we always wait, I'll get married, I'll make this money, I'll do that, your life is going to school. People don't realize that when you're going to school, you're not just getting ready to make money. This is 4 years of your life where you're beautiful, you're excited, you're around people. You've got to work hard, but you've got to enjoy it.
Some people can't.
I think they have the ability, but through environment, through money, through belief systems, they're not able to. I believe we all have the ability to be human and to use our minds and to have justice, but it's a perversion of the cultures of patriarchy, of poverty, of disabilities, whatever it is, that don't allow people to I think to some extent it may not be fair, but I think you have a good life, and I think you enjoy what you're doing, interviewing people and stuff.
I won't be able to enjoy my 4 years of university. It's because the only clear reason is because just the idea of I could be doing something productive kills the hangout.
Well, that's a shame, because one of the things I talk to my students a lot about in critical thinking is that if you don't, so basically one of the problems a lot of the students have, I don't blame them for it, but they're not going to get grades, is they don't have software. So they don't know history, they don't know, even they study physics, they don't know it. So I'll make them do physics and stuff. But when you know stuff, and you're partly able to, because you do know stuff, or you're not able to answer these questions, or you're a mannequin and someone gave you those, but I don't think so. I think you do know stuff because of your father and you're a little bit more mature. But if you don't know stuff, then when you go outside, I always tell the students, if you don't know stuff about the world and you tell people you have a degree, this is a reflection on you, it's a reflection on your family, and it's a reflection on Cambodia. And so I think you can be educated and be successful. And I think being able to think and make decisions, and maybe you can make better decisions, you make fine decisions now without the education, but can you talk to people? Can you look at people and appreciate what they're doing, and can you be a better person? Because I think when you vote, knowing history, knowing political science, knowing poverty, I think understanding those things makes you a different person, makes you a better parent, a better partner, and a better citizen.
That's true. Awareness.
Thank you.
Oh my days. Oh my God, that was a lot.
So you're in school now?
No, I just graduated 8 months ago.
And it was a tough journey.
It wasn't a tough journey. I had a lot of friends that are like-minded, and they can't seem to enjoy their life until they prove something. It could be a very bad trauma, cultural thing that their parents have put a lot of pressure on them. However, I like it this way. I think we're here for a reason, and I won't be able to just go out and.
In some sense, it seems like what you're saying is that you're here to fulfill your parents' dreams about what you should be?
No, I'm not. They're not telling me anything, or like they give me specific instructions. It's just I have this intrinsic itch that I have to do something with my life.
It just came from
And
a weed? It came from there?
It's yeah, somewhere, but there's a desperation as well, and some people feel it later in life, but I feel it very early on that I have to make something, do something.
But the question, I mean, if I can ask a question, I mean, you look at what you're doing today or with the other interviews, you wouldn't, I mean, if everything stopped now, you would say that you're not successful. You haven't had a impression on the people who work with you, the people who know you, your parents, and look at you and go, he didn't live long, he didn't make millions of dollars, but look what he did in that short time.
Yeah.
But it's not enough. Well, don't say it. I don't think it's enough at all.
See, there's a problem because, again, if I look at you compared to a lot of the people who are in my village or stuff like that, I mean, you're living the dream, Vita. And, I mean, so that's part of the problem is you can have something as beautiful as this or whatever, and you're not able to smell the rose and go, my God, that's just...
Here's my counter argument. So Jordan Peterson, he said, if you could make 100,000 but you make 10,000, then you're not using your potential to the fullest.
The problem with that is, if you're making 100,000, not 200,000, why did you stop at 100?
Right. But my point still stands.
I understand. But what I'm saying is, this is Buddha. Desire is infinite. And so if your desire to be at a certain level, because that's one of the things that I find curious, and I find it very sad in some sense. You have people that, I mean, it's nice to keep on working, but you look, I mean, in some sense, it's nice that people who have, and they just like Gates give it away and stuff. But you look at people, and they're still either doing corruption or working hard and competing and stuff like that. And it's like, at what point do you just go back? I mean, if you can never look back and just enjoy it, it's, I don't know, it's like a curse in a sense.
I do enjoy it. I enjoy competing. I enjoy talking to you, talking to people.
Do you enjoy competing or winning?
I enjoy competing and winning, both.
But if you don't win, that's okay?
Let me pause on that. When I don't win, which I just lost a match a couple of days ago, was a wrestling match.
Oh, you wrestle?
Oh, yeah. I do wrestle.
Cool.
It was
like Greco-Roman?
It's a jiu-jitsu, not Greco-Roman.
Oh.
I think Greco-Roman is quite dangerous. You do a suplex.
Jiu-jitsu, you're using your fist. I mean, that's really dangerous.
Well,
or you're just pennies. You're not hitting. You're not doing MMA. You're just doing bars.
Submissions only. Submissions only.
Oh, no bars.
So
No choking
what do you mean
outs.
no bars? No, it is
Arm
submission
bars.
only. Arm bars, anything.
Choking out.
Anything. Choke out. You break someone's
But
joints.
no strikes.
No strikes.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I enjoy, even though I lost, but it gives more fuel that now I have to polish this. And
Yeah,
it gives
spurs
to the
you
next
on.
one.
Right.
To the next competition. Just
But
keeps going.
the thing is, we look at sometimes the example of being women, they want to be beautiful, but at some point, they're going to reach 45, 54, or 62 or whatever. And I mean, the same is going to be true for you with that.
I think it's going to shift from physical and martial arts into something more psychological and maybe a corporate.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's worthwhile, and if it works for you, that's cool. I'm just saying that sometimes there's this idea, because it's interesting. So I think you do have a good life, and I think what you do here is very cool. I'm enjoying talking to you for sure, and the ambiance and everything. But I think there, and I think some people can do it, but then I think there's a balance sometimes. And I think the idea that Buddha talked about, which is that, if you're always wanting more, you're like on that train looking for the next destination.
I've always believed that in order to live your life to the fullest, you're going to have some bad things happen to you. And that means there will be unbalance. You're going to have to do something a bit more extreme.
I think you look at the people like Elon Musk or something. I mean, you stay busy and you're just always kind of going, which is cool. And I think if it works, it's cool. And for some people, one of the problems I have with America, and I'm a huge Pirates fan. They suck. I don't know how to say it in Khmer, but is that I mean, the people who are winners or wieners or whatever you want to call it, it's pretty. Things are pretty good. for the people who make movies or, the people who win the elections and stuff. But then the people who have that same job but they don't, it's very tough.
They turn to drugs. Probably.
Or kill themselves. Well,
No,
there you
no,
go.
no.
They're just losers.
Okay. Well, it's okay. I think it's part of the journey. Something bad happens, you get a story. So you win either way, I think.
Write a tell-all novel. Yes.
So going back to the depression,
Yeah.
so functionality. Can you give us any tips on how to be careful with depression, to not get depressed?
Not fall into it. Well, first of all, I think the main thing is, because I think one of the dangers, particularly in Asia, but also in America, is people have it, but people do things. So in Asia, you're going to avoid it and say, I'm not depressed. But it's like the same thing, I'm not alcoholic, but everybody knows you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so one is to be in touch with your emotions. But the other is, so if you're depressed, the first thing is to get help. I mean, if it's just a little bit, but quite often what people do, and it's in Cambodia everywhere, is they drink alcohol. So then when you drink alcohol, that's going to give you depression because alcohol is a depressant. That's one thing.
Really?
Yeah, so people think it's a different drug. Actually, what ends up, so you become pickled, bun lai trua, for a little while, but then you fall asleep. So it's actually a very bad depressant, which makes you happy for a brief time, but it's a depressant, but not a very good one. And so you're actually drinking something that makes you more depressed, less anxious. And then people may work all the time, they may watch TV, and that's very dangerous because particularly males, so it's two different types of variety. So there's major depression, which is, as it says, is major, is much more serious. And then there's dysthymia. So dysthymia is maybe like a baby or depression with a small m. And these people tend to be more personality. They can go to work, they don't kill themselves, but their whole life is just trying to avoid it and just kind of empty lives. And then all of a sudden they wake up one day and they go, oh my God. So it's like people watching Monday Night Football, watching sports all weekend, drinking beer, and just not being happy in their marriage, with their kids, with their job, but just kind of pushing on and just distracting themselves always. But they're depressed and they just don't realize it. So what you can do, so again, the easiest, of course, is to take what's called a SSRI, or one of the buspirosam, which is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which basically helps the serotonin stay in your brain. But that alone, again, if you've been depressed for a long time or you have bad habits, that's not going to really fix. So I mean, for some people that's enough, and it is kind of like the people who just want to take a pill and lose weight. But again, if you take the pill, you still have those bad habits. You're just then with the same different body, but same things. So what's better probably is to understand how you got there. So how can you do it? So I think to be a human is to be, so you're obviously doing jiu-jitsu. You can't do jiu-jitsu if you're not in shape, or you can, you just get kicked all the time. So is being physical. So I'm older, but I play tennis, I play badminton, I play table tennis, and basketball, well, chess or something, yeah. So I think is to be active. Another is relationships. So if you're constantly doing stuff, but you're not in touch, friends, significant other, kids, relatives. And in Cambodia, you're really good about that. I think that's really something that's really nice, is that family plays an important role. There's a spiritual part of you, and it may not make you depressed, but, spirituality is different. But somehow having time to think about life and kind of sit back and do those things, which you kind of, in some sense, with some of your people, you probably do when you interview. And then there's also the part of you that there's a fuel, the food you eat. So, I mean, to do jiu-jitsu, if you're eating junk, it's not going to turn out too well. That's one of the reasons why I have the soybeans, the edamame, because it's just protein, low fat. And so, and also, if you're in an abusive relationship, you should be depressed. To not be depressed would be horrible. And, so if your job is bad, it's really scary for sometimes. Like, a lot of people don't love their jobs, or they don't like it. So you look at the people in the factories, I don't think a lot of women are going to work like zippity-doo-dah.
No, they don't, yeah.
But you feel bad for them. And so maybe they're not depressed, or maybe they avoid things. But let's say they're kind of like, it's like a radio, but it's not very loud or something. So it's kind of sad. At some point you realize, like, I had all this, I could have been so much, and yet I did so little. And so I think trying to live life fully, and if you're in a bad situation, you have to change it. So in some sense, you're saying, well, I'm not. The problem for you with jiu-jitsu is there's going to be people better than you. They do it full time, and no matter what you do, they're going to kick your ass. And no matter how well I shoot, There's going to be people who are bigger than me, and I know from America there's people who are really good. And if you accept that and you say, so for me, just playing with the kids at AUPP and having some fun is pretty cool. And I kind of realize my expectations. I want to do better, but partly it's about exercising and kind of bonding and stuff. And I think you're the same thing. You don't expect to go fight in Singapore and lose your teeth. So
I'd love to.
So I think when you don't find a lot of joggers who are depressed.
True.
And so, but again, when people are depressed, it's really hard to then drug. It's like, life sucks. And you're just thinking, I've sucked. I'm fat. And, it's really hard to do that stuff. So I think if you can't, pull yourself out, you can't concentrate, everything seems to be empty. And Winnie the Pooh is Eeyore. Everything, this is going to turn out bad. Everything's sad. Get help. And it doesn't have to be, if you don't have money or insurance, you can talk to people and share.
If I'm depressed, can I come to you?
Absolutely.
What would you do first thing?
I would go, why are you depressed when you've got jujitsu, a good family and the dogs? It's just like, what happened? Did you get hit on the head? You have dogs. One's 7 years old. Your environment doesn't make everything, but you're interviewing, you seem to be, so for you to be depressed, something really strange happened. It may be, for you it's probably a dog died or something bad happened, you're feeling depressed, which is natural. It seems, to be honest, you have really goals, you're very focused, you really know where you want to go, and you're doing a lot of what you enjoy. And so for you to become depressed would be just fascinating and bizarre.
Right.
Because you're not really leading that kind of life. You're not working in a garment factory, you're not being abused, your coworkers seem to like you. You have a nice environment, and I think I don't think you expect yourself to make $1 million with this. I don't know, but this is part of you kind of doing what resonates, and trying to make your country better and stuff like that. And so you're doing things that aren't just, you're saying about money, but you're not full-time just doing money. You're doing stuff, spending time with dogs, with friends and stuff like that. So you portray yourself a certain way. There's a part of you that really lives and tries to enjoy life.
Thank you. The thing you said about joggers never being depressed. So as part of a run team, he's an ambassador, and when I joined his run team, they're just all happy. So is there a link with movement and depression?
There's actually something called a runner's high. That doesn't mean they're on the mountain. So when you run a lot, he can probably tell you that, which is you kind of get all these kind of pleasure chemicals in your brain. That's assuming that you're not throwing up, rolling on the thing and in pain. But you have to kind of go through all where you've lost the oxygen and stuff like that. But there's also the sense, I think if you're running, you're not just running a couple of feet and going, that you've accomplished. It's the same thing. The fact that you're in there at your age, not being a professional athlete doing jiu-jitsu, which is kind of cool. I'd like to do that too, I guess, but I would get hurt.
You've tried Greco-Roman wrestling?
No, I never actually. I've only done it a couple times. I remember one time I was digging dinosaur bones in South Dakota, and there was this guy.
Archaeologist.
Just when I was a kid, I got sent there. I was into dinosaurs. Actually, when I was 6 years old, people would ask me, "What do you want to be?" I would say, "I want to be an archaeologist, an ichthyologist, and a paleontologist." And they'd say, "Okay." I'm the same person I was, just small. So I would wrestle, and actually in my high school. So I like it in some sense, but you really need stamina. The one thing you need besides, you have to kind of know the moves. But I've always played sports. As a male, to not play sports is just horrible. So I just had surgery on this arm because I was playing with pain, and I can play with pain, but it wasn't going away. So I decided, let's just fix it.
Right.
It's because everything I use, because I played racket sports. I used to play racquetball. I played tennis, basketball. I can shoot. It's just like, ouch, and it's just unpleasant. So I've just started back, and so it doesn't matter. Even if I'm 85, I'm hopefully able, even if I can't do what I'm doing now, to walk, do something. I think you have to be active.
I think so too. I think it's connected physically.
And I think, unfortunately, women are quite often seen as not doing that. And particularly, you never see women running unless they're being chased. So, and I think that's unfortunate, because I think, you look at particularly Australia and some of the countries. I think that's something that's unfortunate for women, because being in touch with your body, because they're in touch with their beauty and things, and they have such makeup, all that kind of stuff here. But to be an athlete and to compete is wonderful. And I think that's part of what makes men different than women, is they work on teams, they know how to play basketball or football together, and the women don't, and then it's just something miss out, and it's not their fault.
I wish they can feel the camaraderie between. I used to be in a volleyball team, and so we train together, we compete together, we go eat together.
Win together, lose together, but you're together.
It's one of the best things in life, I think.
Well, I think it also makes you a better supervisor because you know that feeling. If you can create that sense of we're all together and no matter what happens, we support each other, that's an amazing organization.
It's one of the best feelings.
Yeah.
So why you mentioned Greco-Roman? I think it's one of the most interesting sport. Why?
It just came to mind. I don't know. It's just, I guess, because I don't know why. I think when I think of Roman, it's just like one of those things. Like, what do you think? I just will say Greco-Roman, but because I have watched MMA and I like it. I used to. I don't do it so much. It seems much different now. If you remember in the very beginning, there's a guy named Hoist Gracie.
Yeah.
Guy was a maniac. So he'd wear the gi.
Yeah, the gi.
And he would. So if you remember some of the guys he fought, they were monsters.
Yeah.
And they should have beaten the hell out of him. And not only that, but you also know that when he first started, he wasn't doing one fight. He was doing 4.
Really?
Yeah, they
in a night.
The whole thing. They just went in. I don't know what pauses they had. They'd win and then go in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they were doing. And he was always a small guy, and he was wearing the gi. So it was just. So they may not be. Now they're more specialized. They've turned like to football, like everybody, all that kind of stuff. And they're probably better than they were. But those guys were just. The heart of those guys was amazing. And I remember one time, there was one guy, he was a monster. He was like as tall as that light, and he would just come like a bar guy. And the guy, there's another guy who was like, it was a really big, they call it like Canada, it was like a polar bear. And he just did kicks on his leg, and the guy was like a tree, just fell down. And it's just because he had skill, and it's really cool when you have these different, so it used to be like you have a judo guy against Greco-Roman, so it's really, but now they're all about the same. Because the jiu-jitsu obviously is a very powerful form of fighting. And unfortunately, I think as it becomes a science, it's not as interesting. Those first fights, they were horrible. People would just destroy each other and stuff. But it was real, whereas now it's more technical.
There was no time limit. There was no rules.
Eventually, it started to, but there was no time limit, and it was just savage. And it was just, you'd have a little guy. I remember, I think it was Asian. He was judo. It's like this monster walks in, or one guy was overweight. It was just crazy stuff to watch.
It's interesting to watch.
It was, and it was human spirit, because Hoist Gracie in particular. He was representing Brazil and jiu-jitsu, but he just didn't lose. He was out of breath. This other guy was a wrestler from America and was a big guy, and he should have been beaten, and he just didn't give up.
Now it's Hiron and Henner, if you know him.
I don't.
The Gracie's family. Those are the two.
Oh yeah, I know there's one, but they're not Hoist. Hoist. He just kept on winning all the time, and I think one time he got his arm broken, so he had to drop out. But I think unless he got his arm broken, he would just keep on fighting until he just didn't lose.
Oh, okay.
And he's tall, he's slender, but he just knew his craft, and he was ahead of his time.
In the UFC.
Yeah, when it first started. That's when I was watching it first started.
Okay.
It was wild, and it was just crazy. Again, you had a guy who would be like 280 fight a guy who's about 170.
I think so. I think I saw that fight. Professor Kenneth, we're gonna do a bit of intermission if you would like.
Yeah.
Okay, Professor Kenneth, how damaging is loneliness?
Terribly. So, in some sense, loneliness. So if you think about schizophrenia, which is basically you can put mental health disorders. There's ones that you give yourself, like addictions. Mm-hmm. There's ones where depression is a classification, or bipolar. Another one would be anxiety, PTSD, panic attacks. And then another type is basically losing touch with reality. So to be alone, I think the only thing that's really more scary than death is loneliness. Because in some sense, if you went to Pluto and you were by yourself forever, it would people can't survive that. And so if you think about people that are very depressed, or people that are forgotten, or particularly people that are disabled, people that are very old, and they live in a nursing home and no one talks to them, there's in some sense. So if you go back to the Korean War, the best way to interrogate somebody isn't to use snakes, spiders, or electricity. What they found is you just leave them there for 1 month and they'll lose their mind. So So that's at the extreme. But loneliness, I mean, as much as you may know you have family, you have success, if all of a sudden you get trapped, let's say in Turkey or someplace, and you can't connect with people, it wrecks you, because we're social beings. Cats are pretty good at being alone, it seems like, as long as
They're solitary animals, yes.
Well, they play and stuff, but they're pretty good. But as people, I mean, there's this idea that loneliness is like a preview for death. And so the problem in terms of loneliness, it does many things. Because one, people that are conspiracy theorists or people that tend to have very crazy ideas, they don't talk to other people, and so they're just bouncing stuff in their own head, and they end up with very strange ideas. Because as you read newspapers, as you talk to people, go, whoa, what are you talking about, dude? And you go, oh, okay. Or it's like, what are you wearing? What is that? You know, you can kind of change your behavior, but you're alone. You're in that, what's called in media, the echo chamber. You're just by yourself with your own echo. And also because in some sense, you can't, I mean, you can use heroin and be happy. And that's the problem with drugs, is that you're really alone and you have to then use drugs, gambling, or whatever it is to be happy again. Mm-hmm. And so the problem with addictions is that at some point, the addiction is more important than the even life, and which is why they die. So loneliness, I think, is, I think if you look at the core in some sense, in a more of an existential sense, loneliness is really what makes panic attacks so bad, because you're alone. PTSD, if you think about the people who have been didn't get treatment or continue to have nightmares, headaches, and all the symptoms, they feel alone because no one really understands. Their family sees them, they feel bad, they pretend, but they feel, so to be in your own little world and know what you're thinking but not be able to share, I think maybe that's the gift of, I mean, one is Buddhism, going and talking to monks or people, friends, but also psychology. In some sense, you don't have to be alone. And I think, so psychologists don't have magical powers or something, but I think we each do, which is, you know, as a psychologist, people pay me money for, or the insurance pays me money the same, but I think we each have that. In some sense, if you care about somebody, whether it be your dog, your relative, or a friend, or even your coach, you have that power to help them. Because in the end, when people are depressed, in some sense, there's, you know, they're just trying to decide, should I live or should I die? They're balancing that. And all of a sudden, one person talks to them, that it may change their opinion. Because you can't say, you don't necessarily lecture to them. The problem that men do quite often is say, oh, don't kill yourself. There's much to live for. You're handsome. You're wonderful. You got all da-da-da. That doesn't help them. You're just talking at them. What you do, and I think one of the things you learn as, like, hopefully as a psychologist, which it doesn't seem like I have it now, is you listen. And basically you just listen to them, and to listen means you care. And this is what happens so often to women and men, is that men don't listen and women feel like you don't care. It's like, well, I've been talking to you for an hour. I've given you advice. This is the thing like that. And so loneliness, I think, is almost more than anything. I mean, I think people, I mean, I know it's a horrible joke, although funny, but real, about, you know, what special power do homeless people have. But in some sense, I mean, to be there and have people, they have their family, but it's like being on the ocean. You're surrounded by water, but you can't drink a drop. I mean, to be washing, to use the bathroom, and to be around all these people walking around them, it's just, it's hard to imagine, really.
So how do you combat that?
For myself, or for people, or?
Well, you can. Have you ever experienced loneliness here? Because you look around, no one's like you, and you're from another country, and like you said, you're like a foreigner.
Well, I am a foreigner. It's like, yeah.
Well, you stay here long enough, I think. If we had a law, we probably would have a citizenship.
Well, they do. There's a 5-year thing I saw online. But people, I mean, that's one of the things I can't escape is my skin. And, you know, so people see my skin and my fur, you know, let's say white monk or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'm compared to Asian. So yeah, it's a reality. I mean, it's just like people in a wheelchair. I mean, you kind of know people, you know, because like for you, they may just drive by you, but they'll, used to be people say, hey, what's your name? Or, you know, it's just what you expect. And it's not always bad. But as a kid, so I'm an only child. I'm the oldest and the youngest. And my father died when I was an infant. And so my mother would go to work. And so for a while, actually, I'm from the South, and we had a maid, so I didn't just live in the house like a ghost. But so as a kid, I was lonely. I grew up, I think that's part of, in some sense, it's terrible, but just like the fight you lost, I didn't have that attitude, but a lot of who I am and the way I think and the way that my mind dances around, and I embrace sociology and paradoxes and philosophy and psychology, is because I had so much time to think. Because, I mean, every Christmas or whatever holiday I was doing, what do you want? I want a sibling. Okay, well, we'll go to the department store. We'll see if there's one. And so I was very lonely. I was aware of it. And at some point, so I had toys, I had TV. Although I didn't really have a TV, but eventually I did. That was like the phones today. But so I was lonely. I remember being lonely. I remember we moved to a beautiful house. I remember just being in the house with the cats. So I was left alone at that point. And so I would just start thinking about things. I would read a lot and stuff, or I have comics, or I would do stuff. But so I'm very good at, in some sense, I am good at entertaining myself. I'll play games. Like, if I'm like in a waiting room, I will then think about, all right, I have to name every classical composer from A to Z, or name every city from A to Z. Or, I just play games so I can just entertain with my mind for a long time. And, I can do it for a pretty long time. I'm kind of used, and also in some sense it's bad because I'm very good at just kind of going and reading books or being by myself. So I'm kind of strange because a lot of people will get together and drink or do stuff, and I'm just, it's not my thing. I don't like it. I sound like a 5-year-old when I speak Khmer, and it's just frustrating. So I'm very good at just kind of going off, but I need alone time. If I have too much stimulation, it's just like a cat. But also I love playing sports, and so, it's a balance. But I am much better at kind of being alone or doing my own thing or just thinking more than other people. But for me, I'm an introvert, although I seem like an introvert. So having one person to talk to, which in some sense this is like, I guess, except I'm different with the cameras, but yeah, I'm very good that way. I've always had friends. I've never had brothers and sisters, but I make very deep relationships, but not a lot of them usually. But here it's different because I feel like the students, like him, and a lot of them, when I meet them, just like I was just at the Eden Garden, I met a student from a long time ago, came up and talked to me, and just, it's just a blessing in a way. It's really nice.
What type of students do you like most?
Honestly, the ones I like the most, it's not fair because I don't really blame people for not studying, but people who, obviously the ones who are easy are the people who want to learn, they like what you're teaching, and they go off and read stuff on their own.
So the curious ones.
Yeah, curious and people. So I have a student actually a long time ago. She's in England now, but so I was teaching actually about feminism. I mentioned the book, The Second Sex, which is about 700 pages, and she just read the book.
Who was it?
Who was the student?
Yeah.
Actually, she's her name is Paveen. She's in England now. But actually, she's somewhat famous in the sense that her grandfather is the person who wrote your Constitution.
Do we know who that is?
Not the UN one, but before that. So, actually, I think he died in the Khmer Rouge, but he actually was wrote the. According to her, I didn't really check a lot, but he was a lot to do with creating your Cambodian Constitution.
Right.
But a very bright person, and she was actually very similar. So I guess we had a lot in common because she was an only child, and she loved books, and she was very good at. She's an only child, so yeah, I do well with only children, I guess, but different people, I don't know, and it just. I think it just comes back to enjoying life. Enjoy the tea. There's the idea, I know it sounds silly, but to eat a raisin for 5 minutes or to appreciate the, I don't know if you look at it, but I could like stare outside and just look at all the things, the life going around. It's just fascinating.
You seem to be very happy and content with where you are, but do you have trouble with any trauma in the past? And if so, how do you handle it?
I'm not aware of trauma. I guess the only trauma would just be, I've had people, I've had my mother die, things like that, but everybody goes through that. But no, I don't think. I mean, I think I'm lucky in the sense I'm American. I'm male. I'm not disabled. I'm not mentally incapacitated. So I don't. I can't really say that I've had a trauma in my life. I mean, there's things that made me upset and stuff, but it's not trauma. It's not like being attacked by a shark or living through the Khmer Rouge or Rwanda. So no, I don't think so. I think I'm lucky that way. I mean, it may sound strange, but I mean, I do have white privilege. I'm aware of that, but I mean, it does. When I'm traveling everywhere I go, in Thailand not so much, but you go to Indonesia and stuff, people notice you, they treat you differently, they may expect you to buy things, but if they don't, you appreciate that, but you try to enjoy what you can. So I guess, I mean, I can't say I've had a terrible life. I mean, I wish I, was taller or had lots of money or stuff like that or things, but it's not trauma. I mean, we all wish for different stuff. I mean, you wish you had like stronger muscles and could, you choke people and things like that. We all wish for stuff, but I really can't complain. I mean, I've had cancer, but I don't think that was trauma because it didn't, survived it. So in some sense, when you have that, it's very scary, but then you survive it and you go, life is precious. You don't know when it's taken away. But I don't think that was trauma.
Usually in psychology about trauma, would you recommend people to just move on and just work on other parts of their lives and try to forget it, or you have to address it and confront it?
You can't force people to do what's right, unfortunately, but it's going to be the worst thing. So I don't tend to work with people. I mean, when I was at Boston University, I did work with people with eating disorders and trauma, but the problem with that is the same thing if you have a cleaner and they keep on pushing the dirt under the rug. Eventually, you're going to have roaches, you're going to have problems. And so the people who never got treatment in Cambodia, Rwanda, from the Holocaust, whatever, they have nightmares. And the problem with it is that it's in your brain and you can never outrun your own brain. And so it's there, and you have nightmares, you see something, all of a sudden you remember the torture, you remember what you witnessed, and then you try to push it away. But you always know it's there. You can pretend, you can play games, but just like the people I interviewed who sold duckalogs over there in BKK when I first came, maybe they were angry at me. I don't think they were. I mean, it was probably something, I didn't expect it, because to see it firsthand, it's so different than America or Europe, I guess, but you talk to someone, all of a sudden, they talk about their experiences and they're crying. I didn't feel bad. It didn't feel like they were angry at me and stuff like that. It was there. It was just so close to the surface. Mm. And so you can, but you can't outrun your own brain. And so,
you have to confront it then.
Well, if you do, it's painful, but what happens, so there's something I did training in Thailand, which is called EMDR, which is basically you have two lobes of your brain. Mm. And when you dream, basically when you have a rapid eye movement, REM, your brain is going from left to right very fast. Mm-hmm. And they found, so this in theory is like a way to heal psychological, emotional scars. So what this person did, she created, is you can use your fingers or snapping or something where it makes you go from left to right, but you talk about the memories. So this is like a fast forward way for you to deal with trauma. So you have an organization here that deals with that with people in Cambodia. But it's a way to then, you don't forget what happened to you, but like relationship, your first relationship where you want to kill yourself and the end of the world, now you just think about it, it's all over, you've forgotten about it. But at the time it was everything. So if you can deal with stuff, it's just going to make you a different person. You can go through life with all these scars, having nightmares and stuff, but it's just, it's a burden, it's tough. I mean, it's mental illness.
Right. So it's a very complex topic.
It is.
Okay, I think one last question before we close it. Can you run us through what a psychology session would look like? As a mean of psychoanalyze me.
Well, psychoanalyze is
so if I'm your patient, what do? Do I just lay down?
Oh, that's Freud. So actually, you still have this. And, you don't really. I don't think you have it here, but I think in New York, probably in Europe, you have it. So that's not my training, but yeah, if you went to psychoanalysis, I would sit kind of behind you. You come in 5 days a week, actually.
5 days a week?
Yeah, it'd be for like 2 or 3 years.
That's a lot.
That's expensive too. Yeah.
What can I
And-
expect, sir?
Well, you would lay down, so
Okay.
you would have a problem,
I have.
and I would be behind you, which is very, if you're on the couch and you're laying down, I'm behind, it's very disorienting. And you would just talk. And it's usually a psychiatrist, but maybe a psychologist, would then just listen to you and occasionally say something. And so almost constantly you're talking, and then they would say, well, you would say, well, I had a dream. And say, tell me about your dream. So did you have a dream recently?
No, I actually slept very well.
But do you have any dreams you remember?
Dreams I remember. Being abandoned.
That's the theme, but what was the dream?
The thing is, I can't really remember, but it's something along the line of being abandoned in the middle of nowhere and by my mother. Is that?
No. So sometimes, but basically what a psychiatrist would do is they try to analyze it, because dreams are like abstract art. So this could be about work, it could be about your coach, but it probably is about your mother, according to Freud, because everything comes back to when you're an infant. And so you would then there would become a theme and everything, so it's almost like literature review. Like sometimes you would say a word like mother, and you use the first word, because what they're trying to do is go to your unconscious, because you're using your brain to always filter, but down below you remember, like, you weren't breastfed, you were abandoned, you felt scared when your father did something, and those things stay with you, and according to Freud, then you're basically set who you are about the age 3 or 4 to some extent.
Mm.
And so once you get in touch with that, through years and years of laying on the couch and talking, you understand, oh, so I don't get in relationships because I'm afraid of being abandoned. Therefore, they know that, and you go, oh, I feel better, and then they do everything like that, is the idea. And so, but to do this, you have to be kind of a very educated person with a lot of money to do that kind of stuff. So you're not going to get blue-collar people.
Mm.
So most therapy is probably today, with insurance, the way it's going to be cognitive behavioral, which is you come in, let's say, I'm having problems in a relationship, or I am drinking too much. So they might have you say, when do you drink? How much do you drink? What are your beliefs about drinking? Oh, I feel happy, I feel sexy when I drink. And they'll think about your thinking, they'll make plans, and they'll do, like if you have a relation, so I want you to say one nice thing to your wife, I want her to say one bad thing. When you have an argument, I'll say, what started it? What did you say? And how do you feel about it now? So they would just do very behavioral kind of stuff.
And that's a wrap. Thank you, Professor Kenneth. Thank you
very
so much, sir. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.